Have you ever felt overwhelmed by the constant stream of information? Notifications, emails, social media? Do you find it difficult to focus on what really matters? Well, the ancient Stoics did too, and they had some powerful advice for dealing with exactly that kind of mental chaos. In today's fast-paced, digitally connected world, it's easy to get lost in the noise. We're bombarded with distractions from every direction, pings and buzzes pulling our attention away from what truly matters. Information overload leads to decision fatigue, leaving us mentally drained and struggling to think clearly. In the midst of this chaos, how can we find clarity? How can we focus on what's essential and make wise choices? The answer may lie in the teachings of an ancient philosophy known as Stoicism. Originating in Greece around 300 BCE, Stoicism offers a powerful toolkit for managing mental clutter and emotional turbulence. Far from being a relic of the past, Stoic principles are strikingly relevant to the challenges we face in the modern world. By learning to think like a Stoic, we can cut through the noise, master our minds, and live with greater intention and purpose. At the core of Stoic philosophy is the idea that true happiness comes from within. The Stoics believed that external events are beyond our control, but our thoughts, judgments, and actions are entirely up to us. By focusing on what we can control, our own minds and choices, we can find unshakable peace and clarity even in turbulent times. As the great Stoic philosopher Epictetus put it, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Over the centuries, Stoicism attracted many notable adherents, from the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius to the former slave-turned-philosopher Epictetus. These thinkers left behind a rich legacy of wisdom, recorded in texts like Aurelius's Meditations and Epictetus's Discourses. Today, their insights continue to inspire and guide those seeking a clearer, more purposeful way of living. In this video, we'll explore 7 powerful Stoic lessons for achieving mental clarity in the modern age. These teachings will equip you with practical tools to declutter your mind, overcome emotional reactivity, and make decisions with greater objectivity and wisdom. Whether you're an entrepreneur battling constant distractions, a student struggling to focus, or anyone seeking a more intentional life, these Stoic principles will revolutionize your thinking. By the end of this video, you'll have the mental toolkit to cut through the noise and focus on what truly matters. You'll learn how to manage stress with greater equanimity, make clearer decisions aligned with your values, and cultivate an unshakable inner peace that endures through life's ups and downs. So if you're ready to bring more clarity and purpose to your thoughts and actions, let's dive into the transformative world of Stoic wisdom. Lesson 1. Mastering your thoughts. At the heart of Stoic philosophy lies a powerful insight. Our thoughts shape our reality. The quality of our thinking determines the quality of our lives. As Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. This idea is the foundation of mental clarity, the ability to see things as they truly are, undistorted by negative emotions or limiting beliefs. For the Stoics, achieving mental clarity begins with becoming aware of our own thought patterns. Too often, we let our minds run on autopilot, dwelling on past regrets, future anxieties, or unproductive distractions. This mental clutter clouds our judgment and drains our energy, leaving us stressed and unfocused. The first step to greater clarity is simply noticing these patterns with detached self-awareness. One powerful tool for cultivating this awareness is the practice of journaling. The Stoics were avid journal keepers, using writing as a means to examine their thoughts and gain perspective. By putting our mental chatter down on paper, we create space between ourselves and our thoughts, allowing us to observe them more objectively. As Epictetus advised his students, write down your impressions and review them later, noting where your initial reactions were excessive or deficient. Another key practice for mental clarity is meditation or mindfulness. By training our attention on the present moment, the breath, the body, or the senses, we learn to disengage from the constant stream of thoughts and worries. This practice of non-reactive awareness helps us gain mastery over our minds, rather than being mastered by them. As Marcus Aurelius put it, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. In addition to these introspective practices, the Stoics also emphasized the importance of curating our mental environment. Just as we're careful about the food we put into our bodies, we should be choosy about the information and influences we allow into our minds. In today's world of 24/7 connectivity, this means being intentional about our media diet, setting boundaries around work and personal time, and learning to say no to commitments that drain our mental energy. For example, many of us struggle with the constant pull of social media and email. The pings and notifications are scientifically designed to hijack our attention, leaving us feeling scattered and unproductive. A Stoic approach might involve setting specific times to check these platforms, rather than reacting to every alert. It could also mean unfollowing accounts or unsubscribing from lists that don't add real value to our lives. The goal is to proactively shape our mental space, rather than letting it be shaped by external forces. Another area where mental clarity is crucial is in navigating difficult decisions. When faced with a tough choice, our minds can quickly become cluttered with conflicting emotions, opinions, and what-ifs. The Stoics recommended a practice called premeditation of evils, intentionally visualizing worst-case scenarios in order to put them in perspective. By facing our fears head-on, we often realize that they're not as catastrophic as we imagined. For instance, let's say you're considering a career change, but you're plagued with worries about the risks involved. A Stoic approach would be to vividly imagine the worst that could happen. Perhaps the new job doesn't work out, and you have to start over. By mentally rehearsing this scenario, you can plan how you would handle it, building resilience and confidence. More often than not, you'll realize that even the worst case is survivable, allowing you to make the decision from a place of clarity rather than fear. Ultimately, the path to mental clarity is a lifelong journey rather than a quick fix. It requires consistent practice and self-reflection, as well as the humility to recognize that our thoughts are often flawed or biased. But by committing to the Stoic principles of self-awareness, inner discipline, and intentional living, we can gradually train our minds to be our greatest allies rather than our biggest obstacles. As Epictetus reminds us, no man is free who is not master of himself. By taking charge of our thoughts, we take charge of our lives. Lesson 2. Overcoming cognitive biases. One of the greatest barriers to clear thinking is the human tendency towards cognitive biases. These are mental shortcuts or heuristics that our brains use to process information quickly, but they often lead us to faulty conclusions. Cognitive biases are like distortions in the lens through which we see the world. They skew our perceptions and judgments, leading us away from objective truth. There are dozens of well-documented cognitive biases, but some of the most common include confirmation bias, seeking information that confirms our pre-existing beliefs; availability bias, overestimating the likelihood of events that are easily remembered; and negativity bias, paying more attention to negative experiences than positive ones. These biases are deeply ingrained in our thinking, often operating below the level of conscious awareness. So how can we overcome these mental traps? The Stoics offer several powerful strategies. The first step is simply becoming aware of our biases and how they operate. By learning to recognize the signs of biased thinking, we can start to catch ourselves in the act. This is where the Stoic practice of self-reflection comes in handy. By regularly examining our thoughts and reactions, we can start to notice patterns of irrational or emotionally driven thinking. Epictetus was particularly emphatic about the importance of questioning our own judgments. Don't let your imagination be crushed by life as a whole, he advised. Don't try to picture everything bad that could possibly happen. Stick with the situation at hand and ask, why is this so unbearable? Why can't I endure it? You'll be embarrassed to answer. By interrogating our own assumptions and beliefs, we can start to separate fact from fiction. One cognitive bias that the Stoics were acutely aware of is the tendency to be influenced by the opinions of others. We are social creatures, and our beliefs are often shaped more by the people around us than by objective facts. The Stoics, however, emphasized the importance of thinking for oneself and not being swayed by the crowd. As Marcus Aurelius put it, the object of life is not to be on the side of the majority, but to escape finding oneself in the ranks of the insane. In practice, this means being willing to question conventional wisdom and popular opinions. Just because an idea is widely accepted doesn't mean it's true. The Stoics encourage us to think like scientists, to test our beliefs against evidence, and to be willing to change our minds when presented with new information. They also advise us to choose our influences carefully, surrounding ourselves with people who challenge us to think rigorously and independently. Another key Stoic strategy for overcoming bias is to focus on facts rather than interpretations. Our minds are meaning-making machines, constantly spinning narratives and interpretations around the raw data of our experience. But these narratives are often flawed, colored by our biases and emotional reactions. The Stoics advise us to strip away these subjective layers and focus on the objective facts of the situation. For example, imagine you receive a curt email from a colleague. Your mind might immediately jump to interpretations like, "They're angry with me," or "I must have done something wrong." But these are just stories your mind is telling. They're not necessarily true. A Stoic approach would be to focus on the facts. The email was brief and to the point. That's all you know for certain. By sticking to the facts, you can avoid spiraling into anxiety or self-recrimination based on flawed assumptions. The Stoics also advocated for a technique called negative visualization as a way to cut through the fog of biased thinking. This involves intentionally imagining worst-case scenarios or potential obstacles in order to prepare for them mentally. By facing our fears head-on, we can often realize that they're not as catastrophic as we imagined, and we can plan how we would handle them. For instance, let's say you're about to give an important presentation at work. Your mind might be swirling with cognitive distortions like catastrophizing, "I'm going to embarrass myself in front of everyone," or all or nothing thinking, "If I don't nail this, my career is over." A Stoic approach would be to vividly imagine the worst that could realistically happen. You might stumble over your words or forget a key point. Some people might not be impressed, but life would go on. By mentally rehearsing the worst-case scenario, you can often diffuse its emotional charge and approach the situation with greater equanimity. Ultimately, overcoming cognitive biases is a lifelong practice. Our minds are hardwired to take mental shortcuts, and completely eliminating bias is likely impossible. But by cultivating self-awareness, questioning our assumptions, focusing on facts, and preparing for the worst, we can learn to see through the distortions and make decisions based on clear, rational thinking. As Seneca put it, "For the rational animal, the honorable consists in the appropriate development of its reason, and the perfection of reason is to recognize those things that stand in the way of its appropriate development." By recognizing and working to overcome our cognitive biases, we can develop our minds to their fullest potential. Lesson 3. The art of objective decision-making. Clear, rational decision-making is at the heart of Stoic philosophy. The Stoics believe that our choices and actions are the only things truly within our control, and that we have a moral duty to make decisions based on reason rather than passions or external pressures. This emphasis on objectivity and logic is summed up in the famous Stoic maxim, "Follow where reason leads." But what does it mean to make objective decisions? In the Stoic view, objectivity is about seeing things as they truly are, without the distortions of emotions, biases, or ego. It's about making choices based on facts and principles rather than fleeting feelings or social expectations. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." One of the key tools the Stoics used to cultivate objectivity was the practice of emotional distancing or detachment. This doesn't mean becoming a cold, unfeeling robot. Rather, it's about learning to observe our emotions without being controlled by them. The Stoics recognized that emotions are a natural and important part of the human experience, but they also saw how easily emotions can cloud judgment and lead to impulsive decisions. The goal, then, is to create space between stimulus and response, to insert a pause where we can reflect rationally on the situation before reacting. As Epictetus put it, "It is not events that disturb people, it is their judgments concerning them." By learning to question our initial emotional reactions, we can respond to challenges with greater clarity and perspective. One way to practice emotional detachment is through the Stoic technique of objective representation. This involves mentally stripping away our subjective interpretations and value judgments from a situation and describing it in purely factual terms. For example, instead of thinking, "This traffic jam is ruining my day," we might say to ourselves, "I am currently in a vehicle that is not moving at the expected rate." By removing the emotional charge from the description, we can often see the situation more clearly and respond more calmly. Another key aspect of objective decision-making is learning to focus on what is within our control. The Stoics recognize that much of what happens in life is beyond our power to change: natural disasters, the actions of others, the passage of time. But they also emphasized that our own choices and reactions are always within our sphere of control. By focusing our energy on what we can influence, rather than worrying about what we can't, we can make decisions with greater clarity and effectiveness. This idea is encapsulated in the Stoic concept of the dichotomy of control. As Epictetus explains, within our power are opinion, motivation, desire, aversion, and, in a word, whatever is of our own doing. Not within our power are our body, our property, reputation, office, and, in a word, whatever is not of our own doing. By constantly reminding ourselves of this distinction, we can learn to direct our efforts where they will have the greatest impact. In practical terms, this might mean focusing on our own work ethic and skills rather than worrying about whether we get the promotion. It might mean putting energy into our own attitudes and behaviors in a relationship, rather than trying to change the other person. By concentrating on what is within our power to control, we can make decisions that are grounded in reality rather than wishful thinking. Another Stoic tool for objective decision-making is the view from above technique. This involves mentally zooming out from our current situation and considering it from a broader, more detached perspective. We might imagine how the decision will look a year from now, or 10 years from now. We might consider how someone we admire would handle the situation, or how our choice aligns with our deepest values and principles. For example, let's say you're facing a difficult decision about whether to leave a stable but unfulfilling job to pursue a riskier but more meaningful career path. In the heat of the moment, the decision can feel overwhelming, clouded by fears and doubts. But by taking the view from above, you might ask yourself, on my deathbed, which choice would I regret more? Which path aligns with my true passions and purpose? By zooming out to the big picture, you can often gain clarity on what really matters most. The Stoics also emphasize the importance of living according to principles rather than chasing after externals like wealth, fame, or power. They recognize that these things are ultimately beyond our control, and that basing our decisions on them is a recipe for anxiety and disappointment. Instead, they encouraged focusing on virtues like wisdom, justice, courage, and self-discipline, qualities that are within our power to cultivate, regardless of external circumstances. For instance, imagine you're a politician facing a choice between taking a popular but unethical stance or standing up for what you believe is right, even if it costs you votes. A Stoic approach would be to base the decision on your core principles rather than the whims of public opinion. As Seneca wrote, "I shall never be ashamed of citing a bad author if the line is good." By staying true to our deepest values, we can make decisions with integrity, even when it's difficult. Of course, putting these principles into practice is often easier said than done. Our minds are complex, and objectivity is an ideal that we can strive for but never fully achieve. The Stoics knew this, and they emphasized the importance of constant practice and self-reflection. By regularly examining our thought patterns, questioning our assumptions, and rehearsing Stoic techniques, we can gradually train our minds to think more clearly and make wiser choices. One modern Stoic who exemplifies this approach is Admiral James Stockdale, who used Stoic principles to survive 7 years as a prisoner of war in Vietnam. Stockdale credited his mental resilience to a Stoic technique he called the Stockdale paradox, the ability to balance realism and optimism in the face of extreme hardship. You must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end which you can never afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they might be, he explained. By facing reality head-on while maintaining hope and determination, Stockdale was able to make clear-headed decisions that allowed him to survive with his sanity and integrity intact. His story is a powerful testament to the practical value of Stoic philosophy in navigating life's toughest challenges. Ultimately, the art of objective decision-making is a skill that requires lifelong practice. It demands constant self-awareness, emotional discipline, and the courage to face hard truths. But by internalizing Stoic principles like the dichotomy of control, the view from above, and the primacy of virtue, we can gradually train our minds to cut through the noise and focus on what truly matters. As Marcus Aurelius reminds us, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Lesson 4. The power of intellectual humility. One of the most powerful yet underrated tools in the Stoic toolkit is the practice of intellectual humility. In a world that often rewards brash confidence and dogmatic certainty, the Stoics recognized the profound wisdom of admitting, "I don't know." They saw intellectual humility not as a weakness, but as a strength, a sign of a mind that is always open to growth and learning. At its core, intellectual humility is about recognizing the limits of our own knowledge and understanding. It's about being willing to question our assumptions, consider alternative perspectives, and revise our beliefs in light of new evidence. As Epictetus put it, it is impossible to begin to learn that which one thinks one already knows. This attitude of openness and curiosity was exemplified by Socrates, the ancient Greek philosopher who was a major influence on Stoic thought. Socrates was famous for his saying, "I know that I know nothing," which encapsulated his approach of questioning common beliefs and assumptions. Through dialogue and debate, Socrates sought to expose the gaps in people's knowledge and to encourage them to think more deeply and rigorously. The Stoics took this Socratic spirit of inquiry to heart. They emphasized the importance of constantly examining our own beliefs and being open to changing our minds. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake in any thought or action, I shall gladly change. I seek the truth, which never harmed anyone. The harm is to persist in one's own self-deception and ignorance." This willingness to be proven wrong is a hallmark of intellectual humility. It requires us to separate our egos from our ideas and to be more committed to truth than to being right. It means being able to say, "I was mistaken," or "I hadn't considered that perspective," without feeling diminished or defensive. In fact, the Stoics saw the ability to admit error as a sign of strength and growth. Importantly, intellectual humility doesn't mean being wishy-washy or lacking conviction. The Stoics believed in having strong principles and standing up for what's right. But they also recognized that our understanding is always incomplete, and that we must be open to refining our views through reason and dialogue. As Seneca wrote, "I am not a wise man, nor will I ever be. So don't ask me to be equal to the best, but rather to be better than the wicked. This is enough for me, to improve myself a little each day." In practice, cultivating intellectual humility might look like actively seeking out opposing viewpoints on an issue we feel strongly about. It might mean prefacing our opinions with phrases like, "from my perspective," or "based on my current understanding." It might involve regularly asking ourselves, "What if I'm wrong about this? What evidence would change my mind?" One powerful tool for developing intellectual humility is the Stoic practice of negative visualization, which we discussed earlier. By imagining potential challenges to our beliefs and considering how we might be mistaken, we can loosen our grip on our assumptions and become more open to alternative views. We can also use this technique to prepare ourselves for constructive criticism or difficult conversations. For example, let's say you're a manager who needs to give feedback to an underperforming employee. You might mentally rehearse the conversation, imagining the employee pushing back or getting defensive. By visualizing these challenges in advance, you can plan how to respond with empathy and openness, rather than getting triggered into a power struggle. You might practice phrases like, "I appreciate you sharing your perspective. Let's look at the data together to see if I'm missing something." Another way to practice intellectual humility is to actively seek out opportunities to learn from people with different backgrounds and experiences. The Stoics believed that wisdom could come from any source, and they encouraged learning from everyone, regardless of status or education. As Seneca wrote, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you. Welcome those whom you are capable of improving." The process is a mutual one. Men learn as they teach. In today's diverse and interconnected world, this advice is more relevant than ever. By engaging with people from different cultures, disciplines, and viewpoints, we can expand our understanding and challenge our assumptions. We might attend a lecture on a topic we know little about, or strike up a conversation with someone from a different political persuasion. The key is to approach these interactions with genuine curiosity and a willingness to learn, of course. Practicing intellectual humility doesn't mean being a pushover or compromising our values. The Stoics believed in standing firm in our principles while remaining open to reason. As Epictetus put it, "Don't just say you have read books. Show that through them you have learned to think better, to be a more discriminating and reflective person." Books are the training weights of the mind. They are very helpful, but it would be a bad mistake to suppose that one has made progress simply by having internalized their contents. Ultimately, intellectual humility is a lifelong practice, not a one-time achievement. It requires constant self-reflection, a willingness to challenge ourselves, and the courage to admit when we're wrong. But by embracing the Stoic spirit of curiosity and openness, we can develop a more flexible and resilient mind, one that is always learning, growing, and adapting to new realities. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake in any thought or action, I shall gladly change. I seek the truth, which never harmed anyone. The harm is to persist in one's own self-deception and ignorance." Lesson 5. Mastering focus in a distracted world. In today's fast-paced, information-saturated world, one of the greatest challenges to clear thinking is the constant pull of distraction. Our attention is continually being hijacked by notifications, alerts, and the endless stream of content vying for our eyeballs. In this context, the ability to focus deeply and single-mindedly on what matters most is a rare and precious skill. The Stoics recognized the importance of mastering attention and directing it intentionally. They saw the mind as a muscle that could be strengthened through training and discipline. As Epictetus put it, "You become what you give your attention to." If you yourself don't choose what thoughts and images you expose yourself to, someone else will. At the core of the Stoic approach to focus is the idea of living with purpose and intention. The Stoics believed that each of us has a unique role to play in the grand scheme of things, and that we have a moral duty to fulfill that role to the best of our abilities. This sense of purpose provides a powerful anchor for our attention, helping us stay focused on what truly matters, even in the face of distractions and temptations. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, 'I have to go to work as a human being. What do I have to complain of if I'm going to do what I was born for, the things I was brought into the world to do? Or is this what I was created for, to huddle under the blankets and stay warm?'" This sense of duty and purpose is the foundation of Stoic self-discipline. By continually reminding ourselves of our larger mission, we can find the strength to resist the siren call of procrastination and distraction. We can learn to say no to the endless stream of requests and interruptions that threaten to pull us off course, and instead stay focused on our true priorities. One powerful tool for cultivating this kind of laser focus is the Stoic practice of premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils. This involves mentally rehearsing the challenges and obstacles we might face in the pursuit of our goals and planning how we will overcome them. By anticipating distractions and temptations in advance, we can develop strategies to resist them and stay on track. For example, let's say you're a writer who struggles with the temptation to check social media when you should be working on your novel. Using premeditatio malorum, you might vividly imagine the feeling of being sucked into the vortex of online distraction and the frustration and self-recrimination that follows. Then you would plan some specific strategies to prevent this scenario, perhaps installing website blocking software, turning off your phone notifications, or setting a timer for focused work sessions. By mentally rehearsing these challenges and solutions in advance, you're training your mind to recognize and resist distraction when it arises. You're also reinforcing your commitment to your larger purpose and reminding yourself of the costs of getting sidetracked. Over time, this practice can help you develop the mental muscle memory to stay focused and disciplined in the face of temptation. Another key Stoic strategy for mastering focus is the practice of memento mori, or remembering that we will die. This might sound morbid, but the Stoics saw it as a powerful tool for clarifying what really matters and cutting through the noise of triviality. By continually reminding ourselves of the finitude of life, we can learn to direct our attention to the things that are truly important and let go of the petty distractions that so often consume us. As Seneca wrote, "Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing. Let us balance life's books each day." The one who puts the finishing touches on their life each day is never short of time. In practice, memento mori might involve regularly contemplating your own mortality, perhaps through journaling or meditation. It might mean asking yourself, if I knew I only had a year left to live, what would I focus on? What would I let go of? By keeping death in mind, we can develop a keen sense of life's preciousness and use that awareness to focus our energy on what truly matters. Of course, mastering focus isn't just about resisting distraction. It's also about proactively cultivating the conditions for deep concentration and flow. The Stoics emphasized the importance of creating a conducive environment for focused work, free from unnecessary interruptions and clutter. They also recognized the value of routines and rituals in training the mind for deep engagement. For example, Marcus Aurelius had a morning routine that involved reflecting on his principles, setting intentions for the day, and mentally preparing for challenges. By starting each day with this ritual, he was priming his mind for focused and purposeful action. We can use a similar approach to design our own focus-friendly routines, perhaps by setting aside dedicated time for deep work, creating a clutter-free workspace, or using mindfulness practices to train our attention. Ultimately, mastering focus in a distracted world is a lifelong practice that requires ongoing commitment and discipline. It demands that we continually reconnect with our sense of purpose, resist the pull of instant gratification, and proactively design our environments and habits to support deep engagement. But by embracing the Stoic principles of intentional living, premeditation of obstacles, memento mori, and the cultivation of focus-friendly routines, we can develop the mental strength and clarity to pursue what matters most, even in the face of endless distraction. As Epictetus said, keep your attention focused entirely on what is truly your own concern, and be clear that what belongs to others is their business and none of yours. Lesson 6. Overcoming regret and anxiety. Two of the greatest thieves of mental clarity and peace are regret about the past and anxiety about the future. These twin demons can keep us trapped in a state of rumination and worry, unable to fully engage with the present moment. The Stoics recognized the corrosive power of these emotions and developed powerful strategies for overcoming them. At the core of the Stoic approach to regret and anxiety is the recognition that both are rooted in a misunderstanding of time and control. Regret arises when we dwell on past events that we cannot change, while anxiety comes from worrying about future events that may never happen. In both cases, we are focusing our mental energy on things that are outside of our control, rather than on what we can influence in the present. As Seneca wrote, "It is likely that some troubles will befall us, but it is not a present fact. How often has the unexpected happened? How often has the expected never come to pass? And even though it is ordained to be, what does it avail to run out to meet your suffering? Perhaps it will come, perhaps not. In the meantime, it is not. So look forward to better things." The Stoics argued that the only moment we truly have control over is the present, and that dwelling on the past or future is a recipe for misery. Instead, they encouraged focusing on what we can do right now to live virtuously and purposefully. As Marcus Aurelius put it, "Don't let your imagination be crushed by life as a whole. Don't try to picture everything bad that could possibly happen. Stick with the situation at hand. One key Stoic strategy for overcoming regret is the practice of amor fati, or the love of fate. This involves accepting that the past is unchangeable and choosing to embrace it as part of the larger story of our lives. Rather than getting mired in what-ifs and if-onlys, we can choose to find meaning and growth in our experiences, even the painful ones. For example, let's say you're haunted by regret over a past relationship that ended badly. Using amor fati, you might reframe that experience as a valuable lesson that taught you more about yourself, your needs, and what you value in a partner. You might choose to be grateful for the good times you shared and to see the ending as a necessary step in your journey of growth and self-discovery. This doesn't mean whitewashing the past or denying the reality of our mistakes and losses, but it does mean choosing to find redemptive meaning in our experiences rather than being held hostage by them. As Epictetus said, do not seek for things to happen the way you want them to. Rather, wish that what happens happen the way it happens, then you will be happy. When it comes to anxiety about the future, the Stoics offered several powerful tools. One is the practice of negative visualization, which we've discussed in earlier sections. By vividly imagining worst-case scenarios and mentally rehearsing how we would handle them, we can often diffuse their emotional charge and feel more prepared and resilient. Another Stoic strategy is to focus on what is within our control and let go of what isn't. Much of what we worry about in the future is ultimately beyond our power to influence. The actions of others, the vagaries of chance, the unfolding of world events. By continually reminding ourselves of the difference between what we can and cannot control, we can learn to direct our energy and attention where it will actually make a difference. As Epictetus put it, the chief task in life is simply this: to identify and separate matters so that I can say clearly to myself which are externals not under my control and which have to do with the choices I actually control. Where then do I look for good and evil? Not to uncontrollable externals, but within myself to the choices that are my own. In practice, this might mean focusing on our own efforts and preparation for a job interview, rather than obsessing over whether we'll get the offer. It might mean working to be a good partner and friend, rather than worrying about whether our relationships will last forever. By concentrating on what is within our sphere of influence, we can cultivate a sense of empowerment and equanimity, even in the face of an uncertain future. The Stoics also emphasize the importance of living in alignment with our values and principles, regardless of external circumstances. When we have a clear sense of what we stand for and what we're working toward, it's easier to weather the ups and downs of fortune. As Seneca wrote, if one does not know to which port one is sailing, no wind is favorable. This means taking the time to clarify our deepest priorities and values, and then orienting our lives around them. It means choosing courage, integrity, and purpose over comfort, approval, and security. By anchoring ourselves in something larger than our fleeting fears and desires, we can find a sense of meaning and direction that carries us through life's challenges. Ultimately, overcoming regret and anxiety is a practice of acceptance and presence. It's about learning to be here now, engaging fully with the moment we're in, rather than getting lost in rumination about the past or worry about the future. It's about cultivating the flexibility and resilience to adapt to changing circumstances, rather than clinging to a fixed idea of how things should be. This practice is simple, but it's far from easy. Our minds are wired to dwell on the past and anticipate the future, and modern culture often reinforces these tendencies. It takes ongoing effort and commitment to retrain our attention and redirect our mental energy toward what is most essential and life-giving. But the rewards of this practice are immense. By learning to let go of regret and anxiety, we free up vast reserves of mental and emotional bandwidth. We become more present, more engaged, and more effective in everything we do. We develop the clarity and courage to face life's challenges head-on, without being paralyzed by fear or weighed down by the baggage of the past. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." By keeping this reality in mind, and by continually bringing our attention back to the only moment we truly have, we can cut through the fog of regret and anxiety and live with purpose, clarity, and joy. Lesson 7. Grounding yourself and guarding the mind. Throughout this exploration of Stoic philosophy, we've seen how the art of thinking clearly is ultimately an art of living well. By cultivating awareness of our thoughts, questioning our assumptions, focusing our attention, and directing our actions with purpose, we can achieve a level of mental clarity and emotional resilience that allows us to navigate life's challenges with grace and wisdom. But as we've also seen, this is a lifelong practice that requires ongoing commitment and effort. In a world filled with noise, distraction, and endless demands on our attention, it's all too easy to get knocked off balance, to fall into patterns of rumination, reaction, and mental drift. The final piece of the Stoic puzzle, then, is learning how to stay grounded in the midst of life's storms, to guard the mind against the forces that would pull us away from our center. One of the key dangers the Stoics warned against was the temptation to tie our sense of self-worth to external markers of success or approval. When we base our identity and value on things like wealth, status, or popularity, we give away our power and make ourselves vulnerable to the shifting winds of fortune. As Epictetus cautioned, if you attach your identity to these things, you will be disturbed when change occurs. Only those things you can control are your own. The antidote to this trap is to cultivate a strong internal sense of self that is rooted in our character, actions, and values, rather than external circumstances. This means taking responsibility for our own thoughts, choices, and reactions, and refusing to give others the power to determine our worth or dictate our happiness. It means staying true to our principles even when it's difficult or unpopular, and finding validation from within rather than without. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "I have often wondered how it is that every man loves himself more than all the rest of men, but yet sets less value on his own opinion of himself than on the opinion of others." By learning to trust our own judgment and stay anchored in our own sense of integrity, we can develop the inner strength and self-respect to weather any storm. Another key aspect of grounding yourself is learning to cultivate a sense of perspective and proportion. When we're caught up in the heat of the moment, it's easy to lose sight of the bigger picture, to get consumed by petty grievances, passing desires, or momentary setbacks. The Stoics repeatedly emphasize the importance of zooming out and considering our place in the larger scheme of things. As Seneca wrote, "The whole future lies in uncertainty. Live immediately." By keeping the brevity and fragility of life in mind, we can learn to let go of trivial concerns and focus on what truly matters. We can cultivate a sense of awe and humility in the face of the vastness of the universe, and find freedom in the recognition of our own smallness. This perspective shift can be cultivated through practices like contemplating the stars, studying history, or reflecting on the impermanence of all things. By regularly stepping back and considering our lives from a cosmic viewpoint, we can cut through the noise of ego and attachment and reconnect with what is most essential. Ultimately, guarding the mind is about developing a kind of mental hygiene, a set of habits and practices that keep our thoughts clean, clear, and aligned with our deepest values. Just as we brush our teeth and wash our bodies to maintain physical health, we must actively tend to the health of our minds through disciplined effort and care. This might involve setting boundaries around our exposure to toxic influences, whether it's limiting our intake of news and social media, or being selective about the people and environments we allow into our lives. It might mean cultivating a daily practice of reflection, meditation, or journaling to process our experiences and reaffirm our intentions. It might involve seeking out sources of wisdom and inspiration that nourish our souls and expand our understanding. The Stoics also emphasized the importance of continual learning and growth as a means of staying mentally sharp and adaptable. As Seneca wrote, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." By staying curious, open-minded, and engaged with the world around us, we can keep our minds fresh and agile, even as we age. This commitment to lifelong learning is more important than ever in a world of rapid change and disruption. By continually updating our knowledge and skills, challenging our assumptions, and seeking out new perspectives, we can develop the mental flexibility and resilience to thrive in any circumstance. Of course, even with the best practices and intentions, we will inevitably face challenges, setbacks, and moments of doubt. The goal of Stoic philosophy is not to eliminate these experiences, but to equip us with the tools and mindset to meet them with clarity, courage, and grace. As Epictetus reminded his students, the greater the difficulty, the more glory in surmounting it. Skillful pilots gain their reputation from storms and tempests. By learning to find opportunity in adversity and to use obstacles as a means of growth and self-discovery, we can develop the mental toughness and agility to navigate whatever life throws our way. Ultimately, the art of thinking clearly is a practice of alignment, of bringing our thoughts, words, and deeds into harmony with our deepest values and highest aspirations. It's about developing the self-awareness to know what we stand for, the courage to uphold those principles in the face of challenges, and the wisdom to direct our lives with purpose and intention. By internalizing the lessons of Stoic philosophy, the primacy of virtue, the power of rational thinking, the importance of emotional discipline, the value of focusing on what we can control, and the necessity of continual growth and self-improvement, we can cultivate a clarity of mind and strength of character that will serve us in every area of life. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." By taking responsibility for the quality of our thoughts, and by continually working to align our minds with truth, wisdom, and virtue, we can achieve a level of mental mastery that allows us to live with purpose, resilience, and joy, no matter what challenges we face. So let us commit ourselves to the lifelong practice of thinking clearly, to questioning our assumptions, focusing our attention, and directing our actions with intention. Let us strive to develop the self-awareness to know ourselves deeply, the humility to recognize our limitations, and the courage to face life's challenges with an open and resilient mind. In doing so, we can tap into the timeless wisdom of the Stoics and cultivate a way of being that is grounded, purposeful, and deeply fulfilling. We can learn to live in alignment with our values, to find opportunity in adversity, and to meet each moment with presence, clarity, and grace. As Epictetus put it, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. By continually working to clarify our intentions, refine our thoughts, and align our actions with our highest aspirations, we can become the architects of our own minds and the authors of our own lives. So let us embrace the practice of thinking clearly as a pathway to personal growth, self-mastery, and a life well lived. Let us have the courage to examine our minds, the humility to admit our faults, and the discipline to do the work of continual self-improvement. In a world of noise and distraction, may we find the stillness to hear our own wisdom. In a time of uncertainty and change, may we find the clarity to know what matters most. And in the face of life's inevitable challenges, may we find the resilience to meet each moment with an open heart and an unwavering commitment to living with purpose, integrity, and joy. That is the promise and the practice of thinking clearly, a path of self-discovery and self-mastery that is as relevant today as it was in the ancient world. May we have the wisdom to walk it with courage, compassion, and grace. As we come to the end of this exploration into the art of thinking clearly, I invite you to reflect on one key insight or practice that resonated with you most deeply. Perhaps it was the idea of rooting your sense of self in your character rather than external circumstances. Maybe it was the practice of questioning your assumptions or the discipline of directing your focus to what you can control. Whatever it is, I encourage you to write it down, to commit it to memory, and to start applying it in your life today. Because the true value of this wisdom lies not in knowing it, but in living it. It lies in the daily choice to show up as our best selves, to meet each moment with clarity and courage, and to keep striving towards our highest potential. This is the work of a lifetime, but it's also the work of each moment. And by engaging in this practice, by committing ourselves to the art of thinking clearly, we open ourselves up to a life of profound purpose, resilience, and joy. So thank you once again for being a part of this journey. Thank you for your openness, your engagement, and your dedication to living with wisdom and purpose. May the insights we've explored together take root in your mind and blossom in your life. May they guide you through challenges, keep you grounded in what matters, and continually inspire you to be the best version of yourself. The path of clear thinking is a path of lifelong growth and discovery, and I'm honored to walk it alongside you. So here's to the ongoing practice, to the daily discipline, and to the profound rewards of living with clarity, courage, and wisdom. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to sharing more insights with you in the future. Until next time, keep thinking clearly and keep living boldly.